He's the horror hunter from down under. He will go in search every week of the best and worst in horror movies throughout the month of October. His mission? Don't come back until he's found some of the best and worst putrid piles of horror goodness you could ever imagine. Horror Hunter from Down Under coming back at you. This time around we're looking at Rick Rosenthal's Halloween 2. Rick Rosenthal is an interesting man to say the least because he directed one of my favourite sequels in the Halloween franchise. He also directed one of the worst sequels in the Halloween franchise, but more on that when we get to it. Right now we're here to talk about Halloween 2 from 1982, not to be confused with that Rob Zombie piece of cow dung. Now, we're moving on and we're going to talk about the cast. First off, again, we don't really have a lot to talk about that's added or new, but again, last time around I mentioned The Last Starfighter because Nick Castle, who played the Shape in the original film, directed The Last Starfighter. Well, in Halloween 2, we actually have Lance Guest, The Last Starfighter himself, Alex Rogan, as one of the hospital employees in Haddonfield Hospital. Now, how great is that, right? So you've also, of course, got returning Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode and Donald Pleasance as Dr. Sam Loomis. Now, this time around, we're picking up directly from where we left off last time. Michael's bloody Halloween night rampage. He's now stalking Laurie Strode in the hospital where she was taken to after he disappeared off the front porch. Now, the filmmakers have said they had no intention of setting up Halloween for sequels. The idea of that ending where his body disappears off the front lawn was just that, you know, they wanted to kind of allude that evil lurks behind every corner and that, you know, you can't truly kill evil. But unfortunately, the people who were the bean counters who purchased Halloween were like, we want to do a sequel and, you know, there's money to be made here. So, Halloween 2. Now, I love Halloween 2 because it's one of the best sequels in the franchise. And part of the reason it's one of the best sequels in the franchise is because they pick up directly from where the last film took off. That's interesting for multiple reasons, one of which is very few films do that nowadays, and I think that it's a great way to start your sequel. Immediately pick up where the last one left off. So, in this case, we've got Laurie in the hospital. She's sedated, she doesn't want to sleep, she's worried that this thing could be after her still, Michael Myers. And of course, we've got Lance Guest who's playing up this whole sweet guy EMT thing, and you know, they've got really good chemistry together, I think. They're only in a few scenes together, but it's enough to make it count, I think. And I really enjoy watching the two of them together. Now, Michael, of course, is just picking off all the random nurses and EMTs and what have you as he's going through the hospital. And there's some really great, interesting kills. Unlike the first Halloween, though, this time around, the kills are slightly more gory. And the reason for that, of course, is this was 1982. There had already been 2 Friday the 13th films, plus a slew of Halloween imitators that had come out. They'd got their work done by sheer gore alone. So, what do? We have to up our gore game. That's what the producers and John Carpenter felt. So, they do that. And it's really great creative kills. I really enjoy Halloween 2 because it's so creative on that level. All of that said, there's also a lot more nudity this time around. And the kills are so much more graphic that, you know, one could almost equate them, they're not quite as bad, but one could almost equate them to an early Friday the 13th film. They really could. I think that the reason this film is as good as it is, though, is because, yes, there's eye candy, yes, there's lots of TNA and gory kills, but they hired real actors. They didn't just say, oh, we'll hire this fresh-faced young person because they've got a nice body. They hired people who could actually act. And I really appreciate movies that do that, particularly B-movies, just because it's nice to have the acting elevated somewhat. Now, let's talk about the fact that Halloween 2, not unlike the original Halloween, also has a TV cut. Now, what's interesting about the TV cut is, well, the TV cut does some things that are very different. Now, as I said before, there's lots more TNA, there's lots more gore in Halloween 2. That means they had to shoot alternate takes and alternate footage and alternate deaths. So, as a result, you get this unusual Halloween 2 that's on TV that people are like, okay, well, I understand why they took out this, but why did they change this line of dialogue here? There's literally one of the opening lines of dialogue for Halloween 2's TV cut is a simple dialogue change, but there was no bad language to it. So it's always kind of dumbstruck me, you know, it's like, why in the heck would you do this? Why would you change a simple line of dialogue that had no bad language in it just to make the TV cut, you know, something a little bit different to what's happened? You know, it's interesting to compare the two. The original cut and the TV cut are very unusual, but they work really well. And if you watch the extended cut of Halloween, or the TV cut of Halloween, and then you watch the TV cut of Halloween 2, they still seam together pretty much perfectly. So, definitely check out Rick Rosenthal, John Carpenter, and Deborah Hill produced Halloween 2. It's a great sequel to a great movie, and it's one of my favorite films in the franchise. I definitely think you'd enjoy it. I've been your host, The Horror Hunter. Don't forget to click that like button and that bell icon so you can be notified next time we have another episode of 31 Days of Horror. Don't forget to subscribe to Aaron Talk so you can watch him next month and watch me this month. Alright, I'll see you guys later.